Hello and welcome everyone to Copy and Paste, the clean and family-friendly Reddit reading podcast. This is the 6th episode of r/MaliciousCompliance, where people will make you want to take back what you said. And don't forget, if you like this podcast, then it would be greatly appreciated for you to like and subscribe. Thank you for joining me. Okay, let's get started. And to start this episode, user/Ocon116208. I work for a prestigious millwork. We made cabinets and custom moldings. Very high-end workings with companies on tight schedules. I was the only truck driver. The company was owned by a husband and wife, and the wife did not like me. They had implemented mandatory lunches for everyone in the shop and building, etc. But due to the uniqueness of my position, and usually didn't have to adhere to stupid rules like that. And I knew it was just a way for them to screw the workers because a lot of the guys were dedicated and would work through lunch. She finally caught up to me one day and was reviewing my time card and was angry and said, "I don't care, you don't have any excuse, you must take a lunch." And I argued the point that said that some of the materials I was picking up were critical. She said, "I don't care." I think now when I enter into the malicious part of this. So I would go pick up zebra wood that they needed right away at noon, and after the load was loaded, I put it in a Burger King and ignored any phone calls that my manager sent, and got back to the shop 2 hours later, and he was livid because he had 3 very expensive people standing around waiting for me. Needless to say, I never had to take a lunch again. By the way, I apologize for that post. There were some grammatical errors scattered throughout it. And the second post by user/ennovyelechim, it's in the description. In my last job, when I started, I would log in as soon as I got there, and if I had anything to finish up, I would do it before I left. I didn't mind, as I'm a team player. This resulted in me doing 20 to 30 minutes a day unpaid, but I liked the company and I liked a clear desk. Fast forward 2 years and my father-in-law was terminally ill. We got a call from the hospital telling us we had to get there ASAP, as he didn't have long left. I told my manager and left at 3:45. Core hours were 10 to 4. The next month, my pay was docked for half a day. I had already made 2 hours extra unpaid that week, but they told me they couldn't make exceptions, and the extra I did was my own decision. Alrighty then. I came in on the dot and left on the dot. I did this for 5 years. I worked to the letter of my contracted hours. My manager was talking to a new starter, and in my earshot she told me she hated clock workers who left on the dot, as this doesn't show company loyalty. I leaned over and replied loyalty works both ways, and being docked half a day's pay for attending the deathbed of a beloved family member when I'd already done more than my weekly hours was cruel and unfeeling. So I showed the company the same level of compassion they showed me. After all, rules are rules, and exceptions cannot be made. The new starter started on the dot and left on the dot, as did the whole staff. I dread to think how many extra hours they lost over the whole department over the next few years. The third post by user/Creepy-Analyst. I moved from Pennsylvania to Michigan a few years ago and only go home once a year or so. A few years back, I transferred the vast majority of my bank account to Michigan, but they were giving me a hard time about closing the account, so I withdrew all funds except for $1.31. I haven't touched the account since that time, so 2 years later I get a notice for inactivity stating that I will be charged $5 if my account remains inactive for 2 years. I spoke with 3 different people on the phone, but they would not let me close out the account without incurring a fee. And since I'm never moving back to that town, I refuse to pay them or add any money to the account. Cue malicious compliance. So I have to interact with the account once every 2 years, or else pay you $5? Fine, give me 1 cent please. When I was there in person last month, I withdrew 1 penny from the account, so now it's good for another 2 years. The attendant definitely gave me a weird look, but at this rate my account will remain open for the next 260 years. And the fourth post by user/node of Renvier. Okay, I've been meaning to type this up for a while. This happened at my last job back in 2018. To give you some background, I was working as a data analyst at a company in the edtech sector. For one of my projects, I created a report that we could give to the sales team that they could then use when asking clients to renew their contract. Clients were typically school systems or individual schools. The report was all graphs, even adults like pretty pictures, and it showed the client's data on how teachers/students were using the product. Then our sales guys could show, hey, X% of your students and teacher are using this X times a week, so you should sign a new contract with us. I developed this report for our biggest client and had the top people in sales all put in input when developing it. The big client renewed, which was great. They loved the report and wanted to use it for all renewals, and we had 5,000 plus clients. I had to automate the process and everything seemed pitchy until I had a problem. The data for the report was pulled from my database, MSSQL if you're curious. Now I was in the research department and I did not have access to the database. Instead, our IT team had access to the database. If I wanted data, I had to put in the ticket, name all the data points I wanted, and I could only name one client per ticket. Also, IT did their work in sprints, which are basically 2-week periods of work. The tickets were always added to the next sprint, so I ended up having to wait 2 to 4 weeks for data. This was fine for the big client report, but now that I was running this report for all renewals, the ticket system was not going to work. Now, if you have worked with sales, you know they don't typically plan out 2 to 4 weeks ahead. At least they didn't at this company. I reached out to IT and requested direct access to the database, so I could stop putting in tickets and just pull the data myself. Well, that was immediately denied, as all data requests will only be filed by only IT, and as a research person, I need to stay in my lane. You might see where this is going. I wasn't happy and sales wasn't happy with the delay, but there was nothing anyone could do. So I reached out to one of the sales managers to discuss a solution. Since data was going to take 2 to 4 weeks to arrive, could you please send me everyone that has a renewal coming up in the next 2 to 4 weeks? With 5,000 plus customers, that averages about 100 renewals a week. He smiled and I understood what was going on and happily sent me a list of 40-ish clients. Quick note, the IT team spends the day before a sprint planning the next sprint, and all tickets submitted before the sprint had to be completed during the next sprint. The sprint planning time was always Friday afternoon because the least amount of tickets rolled in. During the planning session, they would plan all the work for the next 2 weeks for the next sprint. Any tickets that came in before 5 p.m. Friday had to be finished over the next 2 weeks. Now, time for the malicious compliance. Armed with my list of 400 plus clients, I figured out when the next sprint started and cleared my schedule for the day before the new IT sprint started, aka the Sprint Planning Friday. At about 1 ticket a minute, it was going to take about 6 hours and 40 minutes to submit all the tickets. So that's what I spent my whole Friday doing. Let's not forget, they had to get the data for all the tickets during the next sprint, as long as I submitted them before 5 p.m. on Friday. That meant they had to take care of all 400 tickets in the next 2 weeks. Plus, I submitted tickets throughout their spring, planning meetings, so they couldn't even plan for it at all. If you are not tech savvy, this might not make sense, but if you are, let me add an extra twist to this. They used I didn't hear a peep from them at all that Friday. To their credit, Monday I started getting data from my tickets. Now I had automated the reporting process on my end, so each report only took me a few minutes to run. It was churning out reports as quickly as I received the data without an issue, and sales was loving it. I saw tickets coming in from every member of the IT team, and during the second week, many tickets came in after working hours. So obviously, they were struggling to keep up. Again, I will give them full credit. They fulfilled every single ticket. But there were a lot of days for them, everyone was salary, so no overtime pay either. This is, of course, on top of all the other tickets they need to complete. So it was quite a stressful sprint. Undeterred, I met with the sales manager again, right before the next sprint, and asked for the next set of clients with renewals. Then the day before the next sprint, I began submitting tickets again. My workday started at 9 a.m. and by 10 a.m. the head of IT runs over to me. He is bug-eyed and asked me how many tickets I was planning on submitting. I told him the same amount as last time. I only had 200 this time, but he didn't know that. And I'm pretty sure I saw him break on the inside. I did feel bad at this point, so I said, alternatively, you could just give me access to the database, and I could query the data myself. I had the access before noon. And unfortunately, that was it for today. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd greatly appreciate for you to like and subscribe. You can listen to this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or in platforms, or to visit in my social click links in the description. And please feel free to send me an audio message or leave a comment. It's been a pleasure. Goodbye.